Beggar girl forced to show what she was hiding, but minutes later, something shocking is revealed. Rate my story from 0 to 10 in the comments, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The soft touch on the faded fabric of the small red bag was like a fuse. The 4-year-old girl, who looked only 2 due to her extreme fragility, awoke from the drowsiness that had overtaken her on the busy sidewalk of Fifth Avenue. Her large, dark eyes opened like flashes of lightning, fixing on the elegant man who had accidentally bumped into her only possession. "Give back my treasure!" The cry that came from her small, fragile throat echoed through the street with a force that surprised even her. Her thin little hands clung to the bag as if her life depended on that battered object, protecting it against her bony chest with a heartbreaking desperation. The 30-year-old millionaire stopped in his tracks, turning to observe the child. His impeccable Italian suit had been stained by contact with the dirt of the sidewalk, and for a moment, familiar irritation took over his features. But something in the girl's intense reaction made him hesitate. For years, his routine had been limited to business, investments in the stock market, and meetings that multiplied his wealth, but he had never witnessed such devotion to such a simple object. "What's inside that's so important?" he asked, adjusting his jacket as he watched the child with growing curiosity. His blue eyes, accustomed to evaluating numbers and profits, were now trying to decipher the mystery of that small figure trembling before him. The girl recoiled, leaning her back against the cold wall of the commercial building. Her torn and dirty clothes contrasted brutally with the elegance of the man in front of her, but she raised her chin with a dignity that seemed impossible for someone so small and helpless. "It's mine. I'm not going to show you. I can pay for it," he said, taking his wallet from the inside pocket of his jacket. "How much do you want?" Tears began to run down the girl's dirty face, leaving clean streaks on her thin cheeks. "It's not for sale. It's my treasure." Her voice was broken, but her determination remained unwavering. The millionaire crouched down, placing himself at her height. Up close, he could better see the marks of life on the streets. The tangled hair, the clothes that clearly weren't hers, the bare and injured feet. Something in his chest contracted in a way he hadn't felt in many years, since the dark times he preferred not to remember. "I'm not going to steal anything from you," he said with a gentleness that surprised him. "I'm just curious." The girl studied his face for long seconds, as if trying to read something beyond the words. There was a premature wisdom in her eyes, the kind of knowledge that only comes from suffering. Slowly, reluctantly, she loosened her grip on the bag. "Promise you won't laugh?" she whispered. "I promise." With careful movements, as if revealing the greatest secret in the world, the girl opened the faded red bag. Inside, wrapped in a clean piece of cloth, was a tattered rag doll with frayed wool hair and an embroidered smile that was already coming undone. Beside her, arranged like precious jewels, was a collection of small fragments of colored glass that sparkled in the sunlight. The millionaire looked at those simple objects, trying to understand why they provoked so much devotion in the child. For him, who kept part of his fortune in bitcoins and had investments in various countries, those shards of glass were nothing more than trash found on the street. But the girl's eyes shone as she touched them, as if they were real diamonds. "They're beautiful," he said, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just lying out of politeness. "My grandma told me that each colored pebble is a tear of joy from someone who found their family," the girl explained, her voice coming to life for the first time in the conversation. "If I collect enough, she'll come back to get me." The millionaire's chest tightened again. There was something in that innocence that touched an old wound, a place in his heart that he had sealed long ago. Before he could answer, the sound of sirens began to echo down the avenue, getting closer and closer. 10 police cars appeared on the corner, advancing towards them with an urgency that made the millionaire's stomach churn. The girl immediately closed the bag and huddled even closer against the wall, terror stamped on her small face. "I didn't do anything wrong," she murmured, trembling. The police officers approached quickly, surrounding the two of them. One of them, apparently the commander, addressed the millionaire with a serious expression. "We received a report about suspicious activity involving a child," the officer said, observing the scene with investigative eyes. "Can you explain what you're doing here?" The millionaire felt indignation rising in his chest. "Talking, is that a crime now?" "Depends on the kind of talking," the officer replied, making notes in his pad. "Is the child accompanied?" The girl remained silent, hugging her bag like a shield. The millionaire realized that she was terrified, not only by the presence of the police, but by something deeper, as if that situation awakened painful memories. "She was here when I arrived," he said, choosing his words carefully. "We just exchanged a few words." The police officers asked more questions, checked documents, and wrote down information. The girl remained silent throughout the process, her large eyes fixed on the ground. When they finally left, the silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. "They won't be back," the millionaire said, trying to reassure her. The girl raised her eyes, and he saw something in them that made him tremble, a deep hopelessness, as if she knew that people like him always ended up leaving too. "Everyone leaves," she whispered. That night, as he returned to his luxurious apartment, the millionaire couldn't get the image of the girl out of his head. His businesses, his financial investments, the entire empire he had built seemed suddenly empty in the face of that red bag and the fragments of glass that represented all the hope of an abandoned child. He didn't know it yet, but that casual encounter would change both of their lives forever. During the 2 weeks that followed, the millionaire found himself returning to that same corner every day. Initially, he tried to convince himself that it was just curiosity, but the truth was more disturbing. The image of the girl hugging her bag of treasures haunted him during business meetings and kept him awake during the early hours of the morning. In the 3rd week, he began to bring small bags of food, breads, fruits, water. The girl accepted them with a silent politeness that was heartbreaking, but never showed excessive gratitude, as if she knew that showing need might drive away the only source of kindness in her life. "What's your name?" he asked one Thursday morning, watching her meticulously divide a sandwich into small pieces to make it last longer. The girl hesitated, chewing slowly. "People call me Little One, but my grandma called me another name." "What name?" "I can't say. It's a secret." Her eyes filled with sudden tears. "Grandma said it was to protect me." The millionaire felt a familiar pang in his chest. Protection. He knew that word well, and the terrors it tried to keep away. His own childhood had been a series of protections that came too late, secrets that were revealed when they no longer mattered. It was during these daily visits that he discovered the truth about the girl's life. She wasn't an orphan, as everyone assumed. During fragmented conversations, she revealed that she had fled from a place where the bad woman hurt her and yelled at all the children. She had red eyes and always smelled sour, the girl recounted one afternoon, as she arranged her fragments of glass in small, colored piles. "She said we were a burden, that no one wanted us anyway." The millionaire's stomach churned. Foster home, mistreatment. He knew these stories better than he would like to admit. His own memories of abandonment, buried under layers of financial success and stock investments, began to resurface like insistent ghosts. "Why don't you tell someone about this woman?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice calm. "Who's going to believe me?" The girl laughed, but there was no joy in that sound. "She tells everyone that we're liars, that we make up stories to get attention." That night, the millionaire did something he hadn't done in years. He researched foster homes in the area. What he discovered made him nauseous, filed complaints, interrupted investigations, children who simply disappeared from the records. a disturbing pattern that seemed protected by a network of silence and corruption. It was then that his life began to fall apart in ways he hadn't anticipated. His mother, a domineering woman who had built her own fortune through well-managed inheritances, discovered his daily visits to the girl through the private driver who had seen him talking to a dirty child on the street. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Her voice echoed through the luxurious office of the family business. "A man of your social standing playing Santa Claus to beggars on the street. She's just a child who needs help," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. "She's a problem you're turning into your problem." His mother approached the mahogany desk where he worked, her cold eyes gleaming with determination. "If you don't stop this inappropriate obsession immediately, I will reconsider your position in the company and your share in the family inheritance." The threat hung in the air like a sharp blade. The millionaire knew that his mother didn't make empty threats. She had built an empire based on practical decisions and no room for sentimentality. His fortune, his investments, all the capital he had accumulated was intrinsically linked to the family business. But when he returned to the corner the next day and found the girl trembling with fever, leaning against the wall with her lips blue from the cold, he knew there was no choice to make. "You're sick," he said, touching her forehead and feeling the heat of the fever burning her skin. "I can't get sick," she murmured, struggling to stand up. "Sick is dangerous. She said that sick kids are too much trouble." The reference to the woman from the foster home made the millionaire's blood boil. Without thinking twice, he picked up the girl, feeling how she weighed almost nothing, and took her directly to the nearest private hospital. During the 6 hours she spent under medical observation, he discovered things that changed his perspective on everything. The severe malnutrition, the signs of deep psychological trauma, the small but revealing scars scattered across her fragile body. The doctor, an experienced man who had seen many similar cases, was direct in his words. "This child has been systematically neglected and possibly abused," he said, closing the file with a grave expression. "The tests show nutritional deficiencies that indicate months of inadequate feeding." Months, maybe longer. And there are other signs. She has excessive fear of medical procedures. She flinches when adults approach quickly. These are typical behaviors of trauma. While the girl slept under medication, connected to IVs that slowly restored color to her face, the millionaire made a decision that would change both of their lives. He called the family lawyer and requested a full investigation into foster homes in the area. What he didn't know was that, at that very moment, the director of the foster home from which the girl had fled was in her office, making desperate calls to all the contacts she had in the police and social services. "The girl needs to be found," she said into the phone, her voice strained with poorly disguised urgency. "She's unstable, dangerous to herself and to others. She makes up stories, fantasizes situations that never happened." The woman hung up the phone and walked to the window, watching the busy street below. She had to find the child before she talked too much to the wrong people, before anyone started asking questions about the documents that were in the office safe, documents that a curious 4-year-old should not have seen, documents that could destroy everything she had built during years of meticulous work, diverting funds intended for the care of vulnerable children. The director smiled coldly. She had enough resources and contacts to deal with a problem child. She always had. On the other side of the city, at the hospital, the girl opened her eyes for the first time in hours and found the millionaire sitting next to her bed, reading work documents while he waited for her to wake up. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice weak but full of genuine surprise. "I stayed," he replied, putting away the papers, "and I'm going to keep staying." But neither of them knew that powerful forces were already moving to separate them, and that the true battle for the girl's life and freedom was just beginning. The girl's recovery in the hospital lasted 3 days, during which she began to trust the millionaire in a way that he had never experienced. Between moments of medicated sleep, she drew on small papers that the nurses gave her, creating images that chilled the blood of any adult who observed them closely. Drawings of tall, menacing figures surrounding small children, houses with windows that looked like angry eyes, and always in every drawing, a woman with her hair pulled back and a cruel expression holding objects that looked like instruments of punishment. "She made me clean her office," the girl said one afternoon, while coloring a new drawing with borrowed pencils. There were a lot of papers on the desk. Some had big numbers, others had pictures of children like me. "What kind of numbers?" the millionaire asked, trying to appear casual as he watched the drawing take shape. "Numbers with lots of zeros, like the ones you have on your phone when you talk about money." The girl paused, raising her eyes. "She got really mad when I asked about the papers. She said children shouldn't be curious." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. Numbers with lots of zeros, documents about children. His experience in business and investments made him recognize the signs of suspicious financial movement, even filtered through the innocent perspective of a 4-year-old. On the third day, when the girl was discharged from the hospital, the millionaire made a decision that would change everything. Instead of letting her go back to the streets, he took her to a small apartment he kept downtown for business occasions. It was simple, but clean and safe. "You can stay here for now," he said, watching her eyes widen as she saw a real bed for the first time in months. "What if the bad woman finds me?" she asked, hugging her red bag against her chest. "She won't find you, I promise." It was a promise he would soon discover was impossible to keep. 2 days later, while he was in a crucial meeting discussing new investments in cryptocurrency, his lawyer called with news that made his blood run cold. "There's a woman here in the office claiming that you've kidnapped a girl under her legal care," the lawyer said, his voice tense. "She brought documents, a temporary restraining order, and is threatening to involve the press." The millionaire excused himself from the meeting and rushed to the lawyer's office, finding a middle-aged woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing formal clothes that couldn't completely hide the coldness in her eyes. She was exactly as the girl had described in her drawings. "Sir, I am the director of Hope's foster home," she said with a sweet voice that didn't match her expression. "The girl that you rescued has been under my legal guardianship for 8 months. She suffers from severe psychological disorders and needs specialized care." "What kind of disorders?" asked the millionaire, struggling to maintain his composure. "Mythomania, self-destructive tendencies, episodes of violence," she rattled off with the ease of someone who had rehearsed those words. "She invents fantastical stories about mistreatment that never happened. She's a very sick child." The lawyer showed him the documents she had brought. Everything seemed officially correct: temporary guardianships, medical reports attesting to the girl's disorders, even photos of other children in the institution looking happy and well cared for. "There's something else," said the director, her voice dropping to a confidential tone. "We've discovered that you have a history of emotional problems related to childhood. It wouldn't be the first time that an adult with unresolved trauma develops inappropriate obsessions with vulnerable children." The millionaire felt the world spin around him. How did she know about his childhood? About the orphanage, the abandonment, the difficult years before adoption? This information was sealed in confidential files. "How did you get this information?" he asked, but he already knew the answer would be disturbing. The woman smiled, and in that smile he saw confirmation of his worst fears. She had connections, resources, and enough power to destroy his life if necessary. "Sir, our institution works in partnership with various government agencies. When a child under our care disappears, we conduct a thorough investigation into anyone who may be involved." She leaned forward. "I imagine you wouldn't want certain details of your childhood to become public, or for your investors to know about your tendencies." The blackmail was clear. The millionaire looked at his lawyer, who avoided his gaze. Even he, A man experienced in complex litigation seemed intimidated by the network of influence that this woman represented. "What do you want?" asked the millionaire finally. "The girl back. No scandal, no questions, and for you to completely remove yourself from this situation." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "In exchange, we guarantee that your reputation will remain intact." That night, the millionaire returned to the apartment where he had left the girl, his heart heavy with the decision he knew he had to make. He found her sleeping in the bed, embraced to the rag doll, her fragments of colored glass carefully arranged on the bedside table like shining sentinels protecting her dreams. She woke up when he sat on the edge of the bed, her large eyes immediately alert, as if sleep was never deep enough to let her guard down completely. "You look sad," she said, sitting up and gently touching his face. "The bad woman came after me, didn't she?" The girl's perception surprised him. "How do you know?" "She always finds the children who run away, always." The girl sighed, a sound too heavy for someone so small. "She's stronger than us. What does she do when she finds you?" The girl was silent for a long moment, her fingers playing nervously with the fabric of the doll. "She says we're liars, that we make up stories about her to get attention, and then no one believes us anymore." "But you're not lying." "No, but she has papers that say I am." The girl raised her eyes, and in them the millionaire saw a wisdom that no child should possess. "She showed me once. There's a paper that says I'm crazy." The millionaire felt a fury rising in his chest, but also an overwhelming sense of helplessness. How could a 4-year-old child fight against a system that seemed designed to protect predators and silence the victims? "I'll have to go back, won't I?" she asked, her voice small but resigned. Before he could answer, the sound of sirens began to echo on the street below, getting closer and closer. The girl ran to the window and looked through the curtains, her face paling. "They've come to get me," she whispered, running back to the bed and grabbing her red bag. "She brought the police." The millionaire looked out the window and saw several patrol cars parked in front of the building, uniformed officers heading towards the entrance. Next to them, the director walked with the confidence of someone who knew she had the power of the system on her side. "Listen," he said, kneeling before the girl. "No matter what happens now, you need to know that I believe in you. In every word you told me." "But you won't be able to help me," she said, not as an accusation, but as a simple and painful fact. The knocks on the door echoed through the apartment like hammer blows. The girl closed her eyes, hugged her doll, and whispered something that broke the millionaire's heart. "Grandma, if you're watching me, can you have the angels bring more colored pebbles for me? I think I'm going to need a lot of tears of joy to get back home." The separation was brutal. The officers entered the apartment with the cold efficiency of those who execute orders without questioning, while the director watched with a satisfied smile. The girl didn't cry, didn't scream, just flinched when strange hands pulled her from the millionaire's arms, hugging her red bag as if it were the only real thing in a world that was collapsing. "Don't worry, dear," said the director in a sweet and false voice. "We're going to take good care of you, like we always have." The millionaire was formally interrogated, his businesses investigated, his reputation tarnished by insinuations that spread through social circles like wildfire. Investors began to question his emotional stability, contracts were suspended, and his mother, furious, temporarily cut off his access to family funds. For 6 weeks he lived a hell of impotence and guilt. Every morning he woke up thinking about the broken promise, the betrayed trust, the resigned look of that child who had learned too early that adults always abandon those who need them most. It was then that his lawyer brought news that would change everything. "I got something," he said, entering the office with a folder full of documents. "A private investigator I hired discovered financial irregularities at Hope's foster home. Money movements that don't match the official reports." The millionaire looked up from the papers he was pretending to read. "What kind of irregularities?" "Public funds intended for the care of children being diverted to personal accounts. private donations that never reach the minors. And even more disturbing, the lawyer hesitated. There's evidence that medical and psychological documents of the children are being falsified to justify unnecessary treatments and increase government transfers. The fury that the millionaire had contained for weeks finally found an outlet. How can we use this? Not yet. We need more solid evidence, witnesses, original documents. The lawyer leaned forward. The problem is that the children are considered unreliable witnesses due to the falsified psychological reports, and the institution's employees have been trained to remain silent. That night, the millionaire made a desperate decision. Using contacts he had made during years of investments and business, he hired a team of investigators specializing in financial crimes. He spent an amount that represented a significant portion of his personal wealth, withdrawing money from stock investments and even selling part of his cryptocurrency. For 3 months, the investigation revealed a network of corruption that went far beyond a simple foster home. The director had connections with local politicians, social service employees, and even judges who facilitated irregular adoptions and kept problematic children silenced through false diagnoses. But the most shocking discovery came when the investigators found old records in abandoned files. 25 years ago, a woman named Maria Santos had been the director of the same institution that was now run by the cruel woman. Maria had tried to report irregularities and had mysteriously disappeared, leaving only a newborn daughter in the care of her grandmother. The millionaire felt the world stop when he read the child's name in the old records. The same name that the girl had whispered that her grandmother called her, the secret name that she couldn't reveal to protect herself. The girl wasn't just a random victim. She was the daughter of the woman who had tried to expose the corruption decades ago. The current director wasn't just keeping her to divert funds, she was keeping her as insurance that the secrets of the past would remain buried. With this information, the millionaire finally had ammunition to fight. But when he arrived at the foster home, accompanied by court officers and public prosecutors, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. The girl had disappeared 3 days earlier, supposedly transferred to a specialized institution in another state. The director, confronted with the evidence, maintained her mask of professionalism until the last moment. "The child needs care that we cannot offer here," she said coldly. "She was transferred for her own good." "Where to?" demanded the millionaire, fighting the urge to grab her by the shoulders. "Confidential information for the minor's safety." It was then that the miracle that no one expected happened. A young employee of the foster home, who had witnessed years of abuse and finally found courage in the investigations, approached the group. "She wasn't transferred," the woman whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "She's hidden in the basement. The director said she was going to wait for you to leave to decide what to do with her." The search in the basement revealed not only the girl, but also a complete archive of documents that proved decades of corruption, abuse, and falsification. The girl was weak and scared, but alive, hugging her rag doll and whispering softly the song that her grandmother used to sing. When she saw the millionaire coming down the basement stairs, her eyes filled with tears for the first time since they had met. "You came back," she whispered, running into his arms. "I promised I would," he said, holding her with a tenderness he didn't know he possessed. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Among the documents found, there was a current address, a woman who lived under a false identity in a nearby town, working as a teacher and waiting for 4 years for the safe moment to claim her daughter. Maria Santos was alive. The reunion between mother and daughter was a moment that would be forever etched in the memory of everyone present. The woman who had sacrificed everything to try to protect vulnerable children was finally able to embrace the daughter she thought she had lost forever. "Mommy sang the same song as Grandma," said the girl, nestled in Maria's arms, her glass pebbles scattered among them like small rainbows. Because I learned it from her, replied Maria, kissing her daughter's forehead. And now we're going to sing together again. The millionaire watched the scene, with his heart divided between joy and pain. He had managed to save the girl, but now she had a real family. He was ready to say goodbye when Maria approached him. She told me about you, said Maria, holding her daughter's hand. About how you took care of her, how you believed in her when no one else did. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't. Maria smiled, looking at her daughter and then at him. You know she's going to need a lot of time to heal from everything she's been through, and I'm going to need time to learn how to be a mother to a girl who grew up so much without me. You'll be okay, he said, trying to hide the pain of parting. We hope so, but... Maria hesitated. Would it be too presumptuous of me to ask if you'd like to be a part of this journey, not as a substitute, but as chosen family? The girl looked up at him, her little fingers still holding the fragments of glass that represented tears of joy from someone who found her family. Grandma was right about the pebbles, she said, smiling for the first time since they had met. They really brought my family back. All of it. 6 months later, while sitting in the garden of the small house where Maria and her daughter now lived together, the millionaire watched the girl play, finally free to be just a child. Her glass pebbles now decorated a small garden that they had planted together, each colored fragment capturing the sunlight like small beacons of hope. Thank you, said Maria, sitting down beside him. For what? For teaching my daughter that there are adults she can trust. For giving me the chance to be her mother again. For proving that sometimes, when everything seems lost, there are still people willing to fight for what is right. The girl ran to them, holding a blue glass pebble she had found. Look, she said, holding out the small treasure. It's a new tear of joy. I think someone else found their family today. And so, a story that began with pain and abandonment ended with love, justice, and the understanding that family isn't just about blood, but about who chooses to stay when things get tough. The colored pebbles of a courageous girl became symbols of hope, proving that even in the darkest places, small fragments of light can illuminate the way back home. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments. Your opinion is very important, and if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.